Welcome in to Weather Wednesday here at New England Storm Center. So, Hurricane Lee is marching across the Atlantic. Well, Tropical Storm Lee at the time of recording, but it will be Hurricane Lee before we know it. So, this will be a Cape Verde hurricane, which is a cyclone that began as a tropical wave near the Cape Verde or Cabo Verde. The Cape Verde hurricane and Cabo Verde hurricane, those terms are interchangeable. So it is a tropical cyclone that begins as a tropical wave near those islands, which are just off the coast of Africa. These hurricanes, they rarely strike the United States. They have to travel across the entire ocean. And when they start getting closer to the US, they typically start bending to the north and kind of parallel the United States coast before pulling away. And this is because of a semi permanent ridge of high pressure in the Atlantic Ocean, the subtropical ridge of high pressure. It's always there. It's not always in the exact same place, and its strength can vary, but it's always there. And this acts as a major steering tool for hurricanes. So these types of hurricanes, they follow along the edge of this high pressure system, basically, this ridge of high pressure. How close these kind of hurricanes and how close Hurricane Lee will get to the United States will be dependent on the strength of this ridge of high pressure and, the size of it, exactly where it is in the Atlantic, as well as other factors over the United States. At this time, the hurricane is going to approach the United States at some point next week. And next week, there will very, very likely be a trough over the eastern United States. So, between the ridge of high pressure and this trough over the United States, this will very likely keep this powerhouse hurricane offshore of the United States. That is the most likely outcome at this time, being a week plus away from when the hurricane is going to be approaching the east coast of the United States. The position of all of these features the hurricane, the high, and the trough of low pressure over the east. The exact position remains to be determined, and that will ultimately decide just how close this hurricane gets to the east coast. Again, it will likely stay offshore. These types of hurricanes rarely do impact the United States directly. Of course, no matter where it goes, there will be large swells and rip currents along the east coast of the U.S., whether or not tropical storm or hurricane conditions impact land. Again, that is unlikely at this time, but it is to be determined. Again, like what models are showing where the location of the trough is, where the location of the high is, where the hurricane will be, and how strong the hurricane will be, how strong all these features will be, will change. The models will change over the course of the next week. They always do, as everyone knows. Forecasts change. They always have. They always will. So it's something that we just need to keep watching. It's not an immediate concern, but it's something that, we'll just have to keep watching the trends to see what exactly happens with the storm. Right now, the Leeward Islands, the hurricane will come very close to the Leeward Islands. Right now, the over the past couple days, the trends have pushed it further to the north, starting to push it away from the Leeward Islands, which is certainly good news. But again, we'll just have to keep watching all of these trends as Lee makes its slow march across the Atlantic Ocean. As far as the strength of the hurricane goes, models have been very confident for this far out to be bringing it up to a major hurricane. Many models, well, pretty much all models bring it up to a Cat 3. There are a handful that bring it up to Category 4 or even Category 5, and this was happening, even Monday, Sunday. Models were predicting this storm would become a major hurricane. And again, that is a lot of confidence for being that far out. And it makes sense. Everything is there to help the hurricane get stronger. There's really nothing to limit the hurricane growth. Of course, the two major components, warm ocean warm ocean water and low wind shear. And of course, the ocean's very hot. It will be moving over very warm water. And there is a very low wind shear in the area that it is heading, at least before it takes the likely curve to the north. So the hot ocean and the low wind shear that is just going to allow this storm to basically get as strong as it wants to. And it will be gradually gaining strength as it continues moving across the ocean. Similar to Hurricane Franklin, which blew up to a Category 4 storm. Of course, that storm stayed well offshore and only brought high surf and rip currents to the U.S. Again, whether or not Lee is similar to Franklin in that regard, or if it gets closer, or if it even stays a little further away, uh, that is to be determined. Again, we just have to keep watching the trends. So the summer is drawing to a close. Meteorological summer has already ended. The unofficial closing weekend of summer has passed, and there remain just 2 weekends left in astronomical summer. Much of the country really baked this summer. New England was not one of those many areas that baked. We did have a few brief warm-ups, but for the most part it was around average or below average. There were a lot of clouds, especially in June, and plenty of rain to go around. It was very humid though. New England was in a very persistent humid pattern this summer. So while it wasn't oppressively hot for long stretches of time, the humidity was certainly there. And there was plenty of rain to go around this summer. In Concord, New Hampshire, 36 of the 92 days in meteorological summer had measurable rainfall. The longest dry stretch in the city was just 6 days from June 18th to the 23rd. Interestingly enough, June gave Concord the longest stretch of dry weather in meteorological summer, which is June 1st to August 31st. So this, of course, is not counting the stretch of dry weather that we are in right now in early September. Boston and Hartford both saw 38 of those 92 days drop rain. In Portland, Maine, saw 57 of the 92 days. That's 62% of the days in the summer in Portland saw measurable rain. Of course, Maine did bear the brunt of June's unsettled weather. The further east you went in June, the cooler, cloudier, and showerier, it's an interesting word, it was. So Maine took the brunt of that weather with that cut off low that literally did a loop-de-loop around New England for 8 days to start off June. Of course, in July, things escalated. It was warmer and sunnier than June, but the flooding rainfalls intensified. There were several significant flash flooding events that occurred in July, of course, including the disaster that occurred in Vermont from June 10th to the 11th. Just a couple days later, there was a severe thunderstorm outbreak that moved through New England that brought more flash flooding and brought a tornado to Vermont. Following Sunday of the Vermont flooding, which was less than a week later, another major flash flooding event was in the cards for New England. Vermont was put under a high-risk category for excessive rainfall by the Weather Prediction Center for the June 10th to the 11th flood, which is rare. The WPC rarely puts that out, and when they do, a serious flooding event's going to occur, and that's what happened. But just for that following Sunday, less than a week later, the WPC put out a large section of New England under moderate rainfall, which is the second highest level right below high. And of course, that event did not compare to the June 10th to the 11th flood, but a widespread 1 to 3 inches of rain, with some communities seeing upwards of 6 inches, did fall, in pockets of significant flooding and road damage once again occurred. So, there were a few more events that did take place after that throughout July. Just, you know, every few days, just flash flood warnings. An interesting fact that I did learn recently was that the National Weather Service office in Gray, Maine, issued 38 flash flood warnings for New Hampshire alone in July. Again, this is just for New Hampshire. The Gray, Maine office covers all of New Hampshire and about the western 2/3 of Maine. So they issued 38 flash flood warnings. This not only shatters the old monthly record, which was just 17, but it actually surpasses the most flash flood warnings issued in an entire year for the state, which was 36. So that just shows you right there how much rain and how much the torrential downpours did occur throughout July. Rainfall rates for the entire meteorological summer were highly variable, mainly thanks to the fact that most of these rain events were very localized. There were scattered torrential downpours around. These downpours were very localized. So in all of these events, you had a half an inch to an inch of rain falling across most areas, but there were pockets of communities that saw 5, 6, 7 inches of rain. So the rainfall rates were highly variable. Because of that, there were not many rainfall records were broken for the summer as a whole. Yeah, a few cities did break into their top tens. Hartford, Connecticut, and Portland, Maine both came in the top 10. 2023 was Hartford's 10th wettest summer. Portland, Maine was the 7th wettest summer. Boston and Worcester both got their second wettest summers on record. The one place in New England that did shatter their rainfall record was the summit of Mount Washington. Just over 4 feet of rain fell on the mountain from June through August. Again, this shatters the old summer record. The nearby mountain town of Jackson, New Hampshire, saw 31 inches of rain, a very impressive total there. So again, the rainfall rates were highly variable, which is why you don't really see a lot of, records broken for the summer as a whole. So with all of that said, that is going to do it for this edition of the Weather Wednesday podcast here at New England Storm Center. So as always, thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and you will hear from me again next Wednesday.